It's time for Tech Talk with Mathew Dickerson. I'm your host, Tony Graham. Good afternoon, Matthew.
Good afternoon, Tony. Great to be chatting with you again.
Yes, remember those folding phones? They were pretty popular back in the day. Are they making a comeback, do you think?
Yeah, the very original flip phones were very popular, and it was almost a statement, Tony. You'd pull the phone out of your pocket and you'd dramatically flip it open as if that was some major thing that was going to happen. And of course, once smartphones came along, that all went by the wayside. But last year, Samsung, as we know, had a go at a foldable or a flip phone that actually had the screen as part of that folding, and it was released with great fanfare to the media, and then a few copies or a few of those models started going out until they had a minor problem where they completely failed. So it wasn't great for Samsung, wasn't great for their reputation, and certainly wasn't great for people who had those phones. So they basically pulled those from the market and they kept working on them. And now we're getting to the stage where I think we're going to have some more serious competition from a couple of different folding phones. And once those go well, you'll see every manufacturer jump on the bandwagon. So Samsung's going to have another go. At the end of this month, there'll be another Samsung flip phone. So that'll be out hopefully. And Samsung say that they've solved the problems they found with the first model. And Microsoft is coming out as well with a folding phone. So I think that you'll get to the point where you do see this form factor start to take off, and it'll be a big decision in a couple of years' time for people to make whether or not they go for that folding or flip phone that has that bigger screen when you fold it out, or they stick with their more traditional and old-fashioned single-screen smartphone. But the real test will be getting into people's hands, getting into the back pockets of jeans, throwing it in handbags. How well does it perform in the real world? And we won't know that until the end of the month when it's out.
Yes, you wouldn't want to miss a call just by having to unfold your phone, would you?
No, you wouldn't. But that used to be the old days, the old flip phones. You'd flip it open to answer the call. But it wasn't so much, the Samsung last year wasn't so much about missing calls. It was about missing whole parts of the screen, as parts of the screen folded away, not where it was meant to fold, and it creased and it didn't display properly. So they had a number of issues, but hopefully they've resolved those.
And you don't always want to have your phone answer as soon as you open the screen either. You want to find out who's calling you first these days.
Oh, Tony, are you screening your calls? Is that why you don't take my calls, is it?
Me, you know, my little secret.
That's right.
Well, with all those hoax calls you get, it's interesting, isn't it, that I always look at my calls these days and I never tell them my first name or my last name if I don't know who it is.
Yeah, okay.
It's just a way of not giving them any ammunition to find out who I am.
Yeah, and of course,
try to trick me by calling my first name. You know.
Yeah, and of course, it used to be one of those things where if you saw it coming from a mobile phone number, you thought it was at least half a chance of being legitimate. But of course, now they're spoofing mobile phone numbers so that you do see a call come in from a mobile phone, and it can still be one of those overseas telemarketers.
Yeah, and you can usually tell by the suspicious digits in front of the telephone number as to whether or not it's legitimate or not.
Yeah, that's right. Some of those ones that don't spoof it very well.
Yeah, or if you get a lot of calls from Melbourne when you never get them, it's interesting.
Yeah.
You know that it's got a good chance of being one of those kind of calls.
Yep.
Now, Matthew, what is the latest security breach that's impacted the New South Wales government?
Yeah, it is disappointing, and at this stage, it, I suppose, gives you an indication that everyone is subject to attack, whether it's an individual, whether it's a government department. There are hackers out there trying to see what they can do, and Service New South Wales, which obviously has a huge amount of data, and you would have to say that most adults have a driver's license, and that's where that Service New South Wales data is contained, or a photo card at the very least. So 180,000 customers had their personal details exposed in a security breach, and the police are investigating, and there's obviously a fair bit of discussion around government at the moment, but probably the most disappointing part is how long that the government has taken to come out and talk about this, and more importantly, talk to the people that have been impacted. They're at the moment in the process of sending out letters to people to say that they've had a security breach with their information. I don't know anyone that's received one of those letters yet, so I don't know whether that process has actually started or not. They've talked about it at government that has actually started that process. And if that's happened, it's really hard to know what to do about it. I suppose the main thing is be alert, but if you know that your information has been leaked, that all your personal information has been leaked, it makes it much easier for someone to potentially steal your mobile phone number or try and get enough information to try and steal money out of your bank account, for example. So you'd really be on high alert if that was a situation, if you received a letter, to make sure that any suspicious activity whatsoever, you're all over it and you jumped on it straight away. But, it's not as if you can go and easily change your name and your date of birth and your address if you do realise that your information has been leaked. It's not like having a password leaked. This is a pretty serious sort of breach.
Yes. Be alert. You're alert, are you, Matthew?
I've said the joke since I was in kindergarten, I think. You should be alert because the world needs more alerts.
That's it. Well, now, material science. Can a material remember its shape?
Well, our hair remembers its shape. Tony, you've got a very curly head of hair, and I'm sure there's times when it might get wet and it goes straight and it might curl back up again, but hair does remember its shape. And so some scientists at Harvard claim that they've invented a new fabric that's based on wool, or it's a wool-like fabric, and it can change shape. And you think, well, that's fascinating in the laboratory. You can play around with that and you can show your friends at parties, but are there any practical applications? And they believe that the best application of what they've created so far is that you can create a material that you could make clothes from, and then you could reduce the amount of clothes that you need to stock or produce to fit the population. I mean, we've all seen those T-shirts that claim to be one size fits all, and I think the only way they do that is just make it so big that it fits everyone, doesn't matter what size you are. But they're talking about it with this particular material that you could have a one-size-fits-all T-shirt, for example, that would shrink or expand to suit your specific measurements. So the organisation would only need to have one T-shirt size hanging on the shelf, and that would fit everyone that came in. They've also talked about self-fitting underwear or self-fitting bras. Again, the same concept. You have one size sitting there, and then it would modify to suit the shape of the person that needed it. So they're talking about sustainability with this, because you don't need to produce as many articles of clothing to fit the population. So sounds pretty exciting in its early stages yet, but keep an eye out for this on the shelves of the local Kmart in the next, say, maybe 10 years.
Well, how exciting. And you've been listening to Tech Talk with Mathew Dickerson on Binjang 91.5.